Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Mind Blown Zone, episode 34, Judgment. This one's going to be
Oof.
insane. We're going to talk about this concept or this phenomenon called judgment. Brad's going to tell us all about it. I'm going to ask a ton of questions. What do you reckon, Brad?
This is going to be a doozy. Going to be a real
Yeah,
doozy. Fire a lot of people up. But hopefully, for those people who are willing to at least give it some contemplation and consideration and perhaps make an attempt, maybe they'll see some results. That's all we can hope for.
I think we could even give a little warning. Like what we're about to talk about is heavy. Okay, this is heavy, right? Like this can impact you. Okay. So you might even want to take a pause at some time when you're listening to it and just go contemplate for a while and then dip back in at another time. Just be ready. Okay. Don't say you weren't warned.
Yeah, take it in, take a few deep breaths. Be prepared for some deep metaphysics and esotericism, as some people like to call it, and see what resonates, what doesn't, and as Matt said, if it becomes overwhelming, give it a pause, come back to it another time because it's
Okay,
that
dokie.
important.
I'm going to read the intro. Here it goes. Judgment. You've heard the word, and apparently it's something you're not meant to do. Apparently, judge not thy brother, lest ye judge thyself. But hold on a moment. What exactly is judgment? Is it just saying something bad about someone, or is there more to it than that? And how can one judge oneself by judging another? If I just sit in my room and judge someone, somehow I'm going to be judged by whom? Is judgment bad for me? Or what is the mechanism by which this all happens? Is there a supplement I can take to counter the effect of judgment? In this episode, I'll query Brad's knowledge of judgment so that we can together find out all about judgment, how to live in acknowledgement of this phenomenon.
Nice. Perfect.
Now, Brad, what we decided is before we would go into the questioning, you had some just things that you wanted to say up front, and we've written this down. So, how about you just kind of take it away? You lead this part, and I'll weigh in if you want me to or if necessary.
Well, yeah, it's really to bring clarity to the word, and it's been softened and watered down and changed in multiple meanings, and so much. There's so much to it that it needs to be clarified in depth before the listener knows exactly what we're talking about. So, this word judgment, this act of judging, I say it's so embedded in our Western cultural day-to-day life that it's almost imperceptible today. So many people are doing it so often that it seems completely normal. And effectively it is normal if everybody's doing it all the time everywhere. It's a normal behavior that we've all accepted or been brainwashed into accepting. The irony, of course, is that all through every major and minor spiritual tradition of value, this idea of judging is talked about as being not a wise thing to do, and yet everybody's doing it, and that's interesting. So obviously the establishment institutions aren't reminding us or telling us or helping us to see the error in our ways, which is interesting in and of itself. Uh, and I guess this last point, just this idea, I call it spiritual superglue, but oftentimes people can see this, where by disliking or hating something, it creates actually a stronger bond to it, which is this phenomena of judgment happening is what the esoteric and metaphysical teachers are telling us. So interesting to note that little
Mm-hmm.
piece. In the clarification category, of course, and we need to clarify a couple different words. So, first of all, the word judgment is used two different ways. There's the actual, original meaning of the word, which is to basically call something good or bad, with energetically. And then there's the other way that the word is used, which really the definition is discernment. So nobody is saying that discernment's a bad idea. So when someone will say, boy, Matt, you really used good judgment today when you made this choice and not that choice, right? The correct word definition of that form of judgment is discernment, which is smart. Right? You need to use discernment all the time to make decisions. So that's not judgment we're talking about in this podcast. Make sense?
Sure does.
And so another thing, kind of a knee jerk I'll get when I'm talking about this is, opinion. So we all have opinions, and that's not judgment, right? You have an opinion on, well, I like this political candidate better than that political candidate, right? It's just an opinion. You're not judging so much as you're saying, I like this person, or I like this movie better than that movie, or this sports athlete better than that one. This isn't judgment, right? This is just your opinion on a subject matter. So as long as you're not saying, so the other piece of that is preference. We all have preferences, right? This isn't a judgment. So if I say I think chocolate ice cream is better than vanilla ice cream, right? That's not a judgment. That's just my preference. It becomes a judgment when I say you're an idiot if you don't think chocolate ice cream is better than vanilla ice cream, because vanilla ice cream is terrible. So now I've turned a preference into a judgment. We need to make those clarifications. Are those all clear to you?
Yep.
Perfect. So next we have all these, I'll say, ancillary words that are all a form of judgment. So it isn't, this biblical sense of the word, like it's only a judgment when this or this or this happens. No. It's built into our daily behavior in the mainstream. And the one I see more prevalent than ever, especially in the younger generations, is complaining. And complaining is a very, very, very incendiary form of judgment. And people are doing it way more often than they even realize. I've said, sometimes a few people have taken me up on the offer when I've mentioned to them that they complain too much, and they say, disagree with me. And I say, well, if I pointed it out to you every time, you'd notice it. And they say, all right, point it out to me. And, an hour or two into our interaction that day, they're done having me pointed out to them. It's because it just feels like a regular way of life to us. And the subject matter that I always highlight for people is the weather. People seem to always be complaining about the weather, other than that perfect day when it's, 78 or, 25 Celsius and the sun's out and everything's perfect. But that's a good place to start and look if you want to see how this complaining thing is happening seemingly in the background, but we're actually putting out this energy and effectively ruining our day by judging it. Say, this is going to be a crappy day out. It's rainy and I can't do the thing I wanted to do. And that can just lead us down this negative path for the day or the week or who knows how long. So that's a huge one. That's complaining is judgment. Likewise is criticizing. And it's equally as insidious as complaining. And of course, we don't mean constructive criticism. Sometimes, if you're a parent or a friend or a family member and you want to give your loved one some constructive criticism, that's a good thing. But we're, of course, talking about the criticism that's injected with invective, with anger or hate or, energetic feelings of good and bad. That type of criticism is very detrimental to us. And it's the form of judgment that, of course, Jesus was talking about. And you watch people watching TV, and it shouldn't take a rocket scientist, Matt, too long to figure out that the TV is trying to elicit this judgment and criticism and complaining out of the viewers. That's how the programming is formatted, to bring those things up. So that's a huge one. And these are, of course, outwardly focused types of judgment. And then when we come to the inwardly focused, we harken back to the Hawkins scale of consciousness. And for those of you who've looked at that before, the very bottom rung is shame and guilt. And these, of course, are a combination of the two deadly emotions we put out of judgment and fear. So the judgment and fear is both built into shame and guilt. But these are obviously self-judgments that are being made against ourselves, self-devaluation, same kind of thing. So that's a case of pointing that judgment at ourselves. And it's just as detrimental as pointing it outward. They both bring the same negative results. Now, a real biggie, of course, especially when watching that TV, is blaming. So we're looking for someone to blame for all the problems of the world, and that's effectively projecting. So they're the same kind of thing, but we're actually, well, I'll talk about projection in a second, but there's always somebody being paraded across the social media sites or the TV stations to blame for whatever problem they're highlighting for the day. They want you to blame somebody. So that's exactly what they're eliciting from us. And lastly, projecting. This is the deeper one, and it's a difficult one to accept, I understand. So this is one that really requires some deeper contemplation. But this idea of projection, according to the metaphysical masters, if you will, is that the thing that we don't like, that's kind of unconscious and buried in ourselves, is the thing we are judging the most out in the world in somebody else or something else. So it's actually, we're unwilling to deal with something about ourselves that we don't like. So we're picking out that thing we don't like in ourselves and highlighting it by pointing the behavior out of somebody else. So that's a stinger. That one stings a little, right?
Well, yeah, certainly.
All right, no comments. Okay, so those are some of the preliminaries. So it's judgment encompasses all of that type, and there's more to it, but those are the biggies. And of course, then we've got to deal with these knee-jerk reactions, and for whatever reason, when I open up this subject with somebody, they'll say, "So we shouldn't throw people in prison for murdering people, and we shouldn't do this for people who assault and battery, and all the different major crimes of the world and so forth." And of course, no, we're not saying that. These teachers aren't saying that. Those people have broken the golden rule, and they're going to be punished for their behavior. But it's important to note that you sitting on the couch judging the bad guy that's being paraded on TV doesn't have anything to do with whatever the crimes are that they're involved in, right? You're not, in other words, you don't have any effect on that person. You're just sitting there adding to the world's judgment by hating on the person. And effectively, when you do that, you're a net negative for humanity. That's what they suggest. And I believe them. So this isn't about punishing criminals, right? That's a result of their behavior, and they pay for the crimes that they commit. It's just not in your best interest to spend time focusing on that and judging the people. That's what Jesus was saying, and other metaphysical teachers like Jesus. So does that make sense?
Yes. Okay, so we're about to kick this into high gear. So it looks like we're going to start with a opening definition or description of what is judgment. Got something written here. Brad, do you want to read that out?
So what it is it's an energetic invalidation of someone else's perspective. So you're invalidating another with your judgment. And even if 99.999% of the people agree with you, doesn't matter. You're still invalidating another person's perspective. And unless you live the life of that person and know all that they went through, and further, if you accept the idea of reincarnation, lived all the past lives of that person, the lives that soul lived and carried forward into this incarnation, it's pretty hard to know what their perspective is. In fact, it's impossible. So you can't, not knowing what they've been through, you can't possibly ever know what their perspective in that moment was, even for a heinous crime. So with that in mind, by invalidating them, you're actually causing yourself harm, because in most cases, energetically, in the astral thought realm where you've projected your judgment, that person is almost certainly going to reject the judgment you've thrown at them in the astral realm. And that rejection of it means it bounces back to you. So you're going to get that return judgment in the form of feeling judgment from somebody else. That's the basic idea.
So you're telling me that when I played Monkey Island PC game and you had to beat the enemies by like playing these word games with them, and you would insult each other and you'd have to insult them back. That when the you used to come back, I am rubber, you are glue, whatever you say bounces off me and sticks to you, is actually the best comeback ever.
That has a strong basis in reality. That's right. Sometimes the person accepts your judgment, and what you've done is torn that person down even further. You've actually put them into a worse place than they were before the bad thing that they did. They
Okay.
agree with your judgment. So either way, it's a losing proposition. You've either helped destroy somebody further or you've helped destroy yourself. It's a
Okay.
lose-lose every single time.
So let's tuck into this, all right? Okay, I'm gonna form some questions here.
We'll do Elon's real
Oh,
quick just because I like it so much.
okay,
His
throw that in.
definition of judgment is his definition was recognizing that which you don't prefer and then invalidating it. So similar to the one above.
You know what? I identify something and I think it's not good and it sucks and it's wrong and it shouldn't exist. Like that, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah, you're basically saying it shouldn't exist. This other person's perspective shouldn't exist because I'm right about everything.
Right. And you know what? That ties in closely to the etymology and more ancient meanings of hatred, which seem to be like a desire to annihilate, and annihilate meaning cause to not exist. Right.
Right.
So you have a
Right.
desire to cause something to not exist.
That's right.
Okie dokie. So, all right. So when you say judging, is that like you say to the person, you're right there, and you're like, you're this, that? Or is it, can I judge just as, let's say, effectively by just sitting and thinking those thoughts?
Yep. They're the same thing.
Same thing.
Yep. The action, the words is just a different expression of the energy.
Right. Oh, it's a different expression.
That's
So
all.
what
Yeah.
would you say is the expression of just thinking it? Or like,
Yeah. So that's a expression not in the physical realm, right? It's in the astral realm where thoughts exist,
mm-hmm.
but it's just as potent, right? You're going to
So
if you express it out loud, you're going to find out whether the person you just judged accepts it or rejects your judgment. That's all. You're just going to find
you'll
out
find out
right then
like
and there.
instantly, right?
Yeah,
Like you
they'll
just
either
say to them, you know, I reckon what you just did is so terrible. I can't believe that you would do this terrible thing.
right.
Then what's going to happen?
Then they're going to react and they're going to say, "Well, I did it because," they're going to have a reason why they did it, right? From their perspective, they did it for a good reason. And that way they're not accepting your judgment, right? Or they're going to accept, yep, I'm a terrible person. You're right. I shouldn't have done it. They're going to feel terrible and it's going to knock them down, another step further.
If I judge someone, does that judgment make its way to that person? If I do it in private and I judge Hillary Clinton or some
That's
Donald Trump, right? If I judge that
right.
person, does the energy make its way to that person?
Yes.
So how
Unconsciously,
does
of
it
course.
make its way to that person?
In the astral realm, right? This is not something we can see or perceive or measure, right? But that's where the thoughts exist, right? So what
Okay.
you're doing is thinking at that point in time, right? And that thought emanates from its creator, its originator, and it reaches its intended target, which is also a human being somewhere, but also has their world of thought.
And
So,
do you suppose that it travels instantly? Is the astral realm
yeah,
just like instant transmission?
yeah, there's no, what do they say? The only thing faster than the speed of light is the speed of information or the speed of thought, right? So, yeah,
Right.
even though neither one of them have a speed, but yeah, it goes there when it's recognized by the person unconsciously, who knows? But in all likelihood, the example you gave, that it would just be instantly rejected.
Sometimes when I'm just texting with someone, they're saying something to me, and I just get this bad feeling that they're judging me. And if you just looked at the words, you wouldn't recognize it. But I'm like, you're judging me. Like, I just know it. Is that
Right.
what I'm picking up on?
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're sensitive to that. Right. Not all people aren't. Some people are extremely sensitive to that. But yeah,
I'm way too sensitive to it for my liking.
yeah. Well, it's good in that you can't be fooled as easily when you can sense in that realm. Right. So the words they're saying can't trick you because you're sensing something deeper. So if I was trying to sell you, some coastal beachfront property in Germany, you might, even if you didn't not think they had any coastal beachfront property, you couldn't be. If I was trying to sucker you, you'd be picking up on that, even though the deal looked
Hmm.
amazing, right?
Right.
You're like, I don't know about this. Something feels off about this guy and this deal, or whatever. But that's so. These are this is when you get into like gut feeling and intuition and things like that, which are sensing in the astral and etheric realms, the realms where our emotions and thoughts live.
Okie dokie.
That's what that's what a.
So
Go ahead.
go ahead. There you go. Just finish that if you like.
I was gonna say that's what a sensitive person is picking up on, like an empath they call them, right? Empathic
Right.
person. They're picking up on something that's not outwardly in action or word, but they're still sensing something.
Okay. Okay. So let's say the thoughts travel through this astral realm and they you instantly, like, just say I were to sit here and just judge someone, they just reach that person. Well, that person was just like living their life, right? And apparently I'm sitting over here judging them. So how do they perceive that?
They don't. They just
Oh, they don't.
yeah. What if yeah right? Like on the conscious level, it's not happening. It's beyond the unconscious level. We're all
Okay.
passing these things around. So you could think of a judgment of me right now, and if you didn't say it to me, I probably wouldn't pick up on it. But there's
Okay.
a good chance that's a good chance I'm going to reject it if you know I'm not going to take kindly to your judgment. And most people don't, right? Most
So
people aren't appreciative of
are you
being
saying that
judged.
the rejection of it, like, let's say it comes in unconsciously, it comes in through the astral realm, it comes in unconsciously. Is there any sort of like integration of the judgment, or does it mingle in with your unconscious, get bounced around in there, or is it just like bing and just gets pushed out?
Well, it's just rejected. But the I think this is the more important. This isn't that important. The more important part of this is to understand is that this is the basic universal law, the law of the circle, is that the creator
Hmm.
must experience what they created. So it always comes
Okay.
back, no matter what. It comes back to you
Radio.
in a
So
form
regardless of
of
what happens over there with the target, that judgment is heading back. It just goes right back to you.
that's coming back. Yeah, it may take a minute, it may take a year, it may take a lifetime, and unfortunately, there's no precise answer to that question. How quickly does it come back to me? Comes back when
Radio.
it's ready to come back, and it doesn't come back from if you judge your wife, it's not doesn't mean that you can expect the identical judgment back from her, in a month or whatever. It can come in any form and from anybody.
Hmm.
You just need to experience what it felt like when you sent that judgment out. So this is, if you listen to the NDE people, the near death experience people, right? They talk about an idea that's obviously talked about in the Abrahamic religions, Christianity, Islam and Judaism. This idea of Judgment Day, right? It's a big deal where you go to the pearly gates and God looks at your life and decides whether you're worthy of getting into heaven or sending you elsewhere. And according to the NDE people, and this is the uniformity of their stories, which is remarkable, is that you do have what they call a life review, and you get to go after you pass away and before you move on to whatever the next thing is, the next incarnation. You have to go through a life review, and you get to feel everything that others felt that you put out to them. So you get to feel the way they felt when you judged them. So,
The implication here is that you can never escape the judgment that you put out. It's coming back to you.
yep, it's coming back in life, and it's also coming back after life. And it's not the end of the world. You just get to experience it all, and it sucks, right? They say it's terrible. You just feel awful, and this is one of the reasons that most people want to have another lifetime. They want to correct their errors, and they want to come back and be more loving. This is why Jesus always said, love everybody, because then your life review is you get to feel all the love that other people felt that you gave them. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the guidance. And again, it's so uniform in the NDE community that it's beyond question, in my opinion, right? Atheists and agnostics say the same thing. So it isn't just Christians or, Jewish people or Muslims that say it. Everybody's saying it, regardless of
Mm-hmm.
the religious tradition you believed in or didn't believe in. So there you have it. Those are the ramifications, is that you get to feel how you made someone else feel.
Yeah, I wanted to go into that a bit deeper with an example. So, say I'm sitting in my room when I'm 15, just sitting down thinking about that idiot at school, going, that person is so stupid. Man, I can't believe you're so stupid. Like, that would be something that I definitely did. Right. So, how might I experience that? Let's say that came back to me years later.
It,
Like, how
it,
might I experience that?
but it comes back in what I'll just put. I have to make a blanket because there is no singular answer. And it comes back in unfortunate situations and circumstances. So you may take it on in a wave, and it could be any number of things. But in effect, you're going to be feeling badly about yourself is going to be the end result.
Hmm.
You're going to find a reason to feel badly about yourself. That's what that kind of thing brings back, because you were making someone else feel badly about themselves, right?
And
Unwittingly, of course.
do you necessarily suppose that I will be feeling that same thing? Like, oh man, I'm so stupid. Or it could have a completely different flavor.
Yeah, in your case, it would have a completely different flavor because you obviously aren't stupid. So you would feel some form of negativity about something,
Mm.
right?
So it's not an exact one-to-one, like the
No,
exact flavor that you put out. It's just like it's the what, like the quantity or of the
it's the
energy is coming back
it
to you somehow.
yeah, the intensity, and it comes in the feeling, right? It doesn't come in the thought. Like, exactly.
Hmm.
And I thought someone was stupid. Now someone gets to tell me I'm stupid. It's not like that. It's the
Hmm.
feeling that you imparted on the person that comes back to you. And
Right. So the
that
feeling I might be putting out there is like this person's like worthless or something like that. Like it's like a non-deservingness to exist or something like that.
well, yeah, I mean, that's,
Just for
that
example.
just as an example. Yeah, it's your cutting into their, opinion of themselves, and it hurts,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
it comes back to you in the form of something that hurts.
Radio.
So good
So there
questions. But
seems to
yeah,
be, go ahead.
I was going to say those are good questions. And, there's no, people, when they hear this for the first time, they want this precise answer. So if I say, Trump's a jerk, then Trump's going to have to come by me and tell me I'm a jerk, right? Or something like that. It's never, ever, ever
Hmm.
that obvious, right? Let alone
Radio.
like he's ever going to meet Trump, right? None of this would work if you had to meet every person that you judged, right? Like if you judged Christopher Columbus, like he's been dead for 500 years or whatever, right? So, it comes back in the feelings is the point.
Radio. The implication here seems to be that you shouldn't judge.
Yeah. You could sum it up like that. Yeah. Unless you want to feel bad about yourself. You want to feel the energy you put out.
Radio. Yeah, like if you
Wonder what
Ayn
it would be
Rand's
like.
solution to the is ought problem. Well, if you want to feel it, then you should.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, some people do. And it's an interesting, we have to go deep, deep, deep into, what this life really is. And, we're not planning on doing that here today, but part of this, what we'll call the roller coaster ride of Earth, of, ups and downs and goods and bads and highs and lows, right? Is that, you chose to come here and experience that roller coaster ride. So
Mhm.
you need to get a taste of the good vibes and the bad vibes. That's part of what you wanted to experience when you came here. So that's the answer to the question of why hasn't anybody made this clearer to me, which I know is coming. I'm jumping ahead maybe. Right? But in other words, if these are the rules of the game, why doesn't everybody know this? And that's really the answer to that question, right? Now that I'm learning this, I'm going to be hyper aware of behaving like that in the future because I don't want to feel bad or have a negative life review and yada, yada, yada. So I'm going to try to avoid this. And maybe there'll be less pain and suffering in my life. And effectively, that's what happens when you start to withdraw your judgment from the world.
Okay.
Your roller coaster ride isn't the same. And some people want that roller coaster ride. And so for them, all of what we're talking about here is idiotic and stupid and makes no sense. They're enjoying the high highs and the low. They're not enjoying the low lows, but they're enjoying the high highs. And that's part of the high highs is when you experience them, you have to experience the opposite end, which is the low lows. So when you go this route of withdrawing judgment, life tends to get a little bit more, and not to say it in a negative way, but it flatlines a little bit. So there's, this thing that would make you jump for joy and go out and party and scream and yell, 10 years ago. That same thing happens to you, 10 years after you learned this. And it's great. You're happy that thing happened, but you're not like through the roof. Right. And that's effectively spiritual growth. And you're not reacting to what happens in the outer world doesn't have an effect on your inner happiness. So you're stabilized a little bit. That makes sense?
Sure. Okay. So what do you notice that we're judging? Like, what are we typically judging?
Well, it's so everywhere that it's almost
Mm,
mind-boggling, right? But I always start with the weather. Like people get up in the morning and they look out the window and they make a determination for how the day's going to go, based on the weather. A lot of people do that.
terrible, right?
Terrible.
It's a
Crappy day.
terrible day. So
Too
if you say
cold.
it's a terrible day, does that mean because you've basically judged reality? Like this, I judge the now for the next 16 hours as terrible. Well,
Yeah.
does that mean you're going to have 16 hours of terribleness? Terror?
Yeah, you're setting yourself up for that. Yeah, you hear stories about how you get up in the morning and you trip in the bathtub and stub your toe and you scream out an expletive and yell and it hurts for a minute or two and then the rest of your day just doesn't seem to go well, right? You get stuck in traffic and the boss yells at you and the client drops you, or you know what I mean? Like this whole you can yourself up for a horrible day, very much so in this way.
Right. And I think I can see the intensity point that you made here before because you've mentioned this part to me before. So, I heard my mom just say, "Oh, what a terrible day." And I was like, "What do you mean a terrible day? Like, what do you mean by that? What do you mean the day is terrible? Like it is what it is, right? Like it's like this." She's like, "Yeah, but it's cloudy and stuff. It's not sunny. We can't do stuff." And then I looked out, like, did she have a terrible day? It's not like she had this hugely terrible day, right? So, but you probably experience some negativity, right? It's like the amount to
Exactly.
which you judge it is going to play out. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you had your, wedding planned outdoors for that day and
Hmm.
it was rainy and muddy and awful, right? You would probably have massive intensity and things would probably decline on your wedding. I'm just, if you were going to go out and play 18 holes of golf with your buddies, and it's just raining all day, you're probably going to have a pretty crappy day, right? You're just because you were so looking forward to golfing. or having a picnic or whatever, riding your bikes or whatever the plan was. So that would increase your intensity. What's important to point out, and this is where we get into how you're invalidating perspective, right? Is that the farmers in your area may very well be overjoyed that that's going to be a big, huge rainy day, and the plants and the trees and the flowers are certainly going to be overjoyed that they're going to get a fresh infusion of water. So you've just defined reality based on your limited individual perspective, and you've invalidated everybody else's reality.
Right. You've invalid just by saying, "Oh, what a terrible day." You've invalidated farmers.
Yeah, and
You've
trees and
sent off
plants.
something in the astral realm to farmers and you've told them you don't your opinion of your perspective on a good day is meaningless, right? So that's going to
Yeah,
come back to you.
yeah, you're going to get that coming back in a way. I mean, you're not picking out farmers and telling them they're idiots, but that's in essence what you're sending out. It's funny. When I lived in Texas for 20 years, and yeah, there were specific years in particular. I can't remember exactly, but there was I think it was 2011. My goodness, I think we had 128 days of no rain, and it was just it was terrible for the plants and the wildlife and everything else. It was a huge drought, and the lake went down like 80-90%. I mean, you couldn't sail or anything. So everybody was just begging for rain, like on an hourly basis, like, for the love of God, please rain. And then, of course, it rained for 4 or 5 days, and people had enough, and they were ready for the sun again. So it's almost like you can't win sometimes. Anyway, just a fun little side story that sometimes your perspective of the rain or the cold or whatever is changes depending on the circumstances. It's
Okay.
circumstantial.
So let's go into like another thing. Okay, we judge basically our environment. Okay, judging people. And before we go into personal relationships, like even just like public figures, right? I'm sure like both Joe Biden and Donald Trump have at least 1 billion people uh each basically judging them, saying this guy's a moron,
You're
this
right.
guy doesn't know what he's doing, etc., etc.
Right.
Just bad stuff, just ruminating and cursing at the TV in harmony with Tucker Carlson and whoever's on CNN, I wouldn't even know. Uh, so what's going on there? Like, do they feel that like if 1 billion people are judging you, do you feel bad or what?
Yeah. No, they do. And yes, and yes to the answer. I mean, to be a celebrity is a massive, massive pressure. And, a political celebrity at their level is as high as it gets, probably, right? There's probably no bigger celebrity in the world than Trump.
Right.
And he's had to, bear the burden of that celebrity. So yeah,
Yeah.
they are getting it and feeling it for sure.
And I imagine like it could crush them, right? If they let it or
Theoretically,
something.
I know there's a lot of people that pray for Trump, right? So they maybe offset some of that,
Right,
right?
right.
People looking out for it, but it is a burden, and you can see a lot of the celebrities and rock stars and everything that go kind of get derailed and go off the deep end, right? It's not uncommon that happens, especially with children who started early, weren't fully prepared for the all the love and hate they were going to be getting from the audience. So that definitely can turn them in the wrong direction, right?
Do you
And
think
some
judging a famous politician would bring back as much karma, let's say, as judging your friend or partner?
I, I don't know the answer to that, but I don't think there's any difference.
No difference. Yeah, it felt to me like probably no difference.
You're judging thy brother, so that's your best friend and your lover and your spouse and the politician you'll never meet. They're all thy brother or thy neighbor, however you want to look at it. No
Mhm.
distinction between them. If I haven't already made
Uh,
the point, I want to remake it real quick in that you're not sitting on the couch judging the celebrity, the politician, the movie star, whatever. You're not it doesn't, you're not doing anything for anybody by doing that. Hopefully people can see that, right? You're not helping with making that person go away or convincing somebody else who disagrees with you of your opinion. So if you stop and look at it carefully, there's no value. And if you really, really, really look at it closely, you'll see that when you are in the midst of judging somebody, you don't feel good at all. Right?
Right.
You feel bad.
Right.
You're angry. You're mad. You're upset. And this is the, you know, this is the Abraham Hicks thing where, you know, this is your inner being, as they call it, right? Say the soul or your higher self or your larger part of you. And there's a lot of different ways to refer to that. But they're suggesting that when you're doing this judging and you're feeling bad, your more wiser self is pulling away from you a little bit, signaling you that you're going the wrong direction. You're doing something that's not beneficial to yourself. That's why you feel bad.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting, huh?
Right. So you're going out of alignment.
Out of alignment. That's right. But basically, Abe Hicks says your inner being disagrees with your opinion. So the larger part of you, right? The wiser, larger part of you disagrees with you sitting on the couch judging Biden or Trump. Doesn't matter. If you're issuing the judgment, they're disagreeing with you. It doesn't matter which politician it is, which party they're in. It's the act of judgment that they're disagreeing with. So,
Shall
food for
we?
thought.
You've got written here GHK conflicts related to judgment. That sounds really interesting.
Well, yeah. So if you look at GNM, GHK, people call it different things. German New Medicine, Germanisch Heilkunde. This you look at Dr. Hammer's conflict themes, right? You'll see that there's effectively there's two themes. There's fear and there's judgment. And you know the biggest category, in my opinion, that produces the most diseases, it falls under the self-devaluation category. So judging of the self, and that leads to hundreds of diseases, according to German New Medicine and Dr. Hammer. So it's a massive one in that scale. So I just wanted that to be brought up, that there's another example of how you're bringing negativity onto yourself. Your psyche, according to Dr. Hammer, is reacting effectively by trying to improve the functionality of some part of your body based on your figurative thinking. She's a pain in my neck. I don't feel supported. I can't accept this person's attitude towards me, right? All these things, your psyche's looking at it as like there's something wrong with your body. So it's now breaking down connective tissue, muscle, or bone, depending on the intensity of your self-devaluation. And when you eventually stop that self-devaluation, then it tries to build you back up stronger in that area. And that's when you think you have the disease, you go to the doctor, and things go downhill from there. So it's a massive category. I think it's the biggest category in GNM, self-devaluation.
All right, let me ask this then. So in GNM, they kind of say, oh, that your psyche interprets your claim literally, right? You say, oh, that person, pain in my neck, right? So you got a pain in your neck, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it kind of relies on this psyche that, the psyche is just like, oh, I just couldn't interpret that. I'm so stupid that I can't understand whether you're talking that metaphorically. I just have no way of knowing, right? It kind of relies on this idea, right? That the psyche misinterprets and applies it to the body or something. That's how they say it in GHK, and from my perspective, it seems that way. So let's say we were to back off from GHK a moment, and I just asked you, just in terms of spiritual ideas and just metaphysical ideas, how would you say judgment can energetically affect your physical body? Like we talked before, okay, if you're judging someone else, okay, it travels through the astral realm as thoughts, comes back, right? But then we got this like physical realm. I don't know where the judgment originates or something like that, or like, but how does it appear to you? Like the mechanism here, like, just what's your perspective on all of that?
Well, I don't want to get people too confused, or astral realm. Some people call it the Akash. That's what the Indians call it, right? The Hindu they call it the Akash. And then, of course, we have the Akashic record, right, which is where every thought ever issued exists. So you can go look it up like in a library. So, and this idea of it traveling around is also a little confusing because, if this Akashic record is just one big giant library, then, right, is there really traveling? So that's maybe a little bit confusing too. Like it goes out, takes
Mm-hmm.
30 seconds to get to Joe Biden, and then it takes another 45 seconds to get back to me. It's not like that, right? This is
Mm-hmm.
it's more rational to think of things this way, in that the a thought realm and the emotional realm, it has a much greater sway and influence than the physical realm.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where all the action's happening in reality. Even though it doesn't seem like that to us, right? It seems like everything's physical, but in the
Right.
physical 3D realm. But in reality, it's this 4D and 5D realm where all the action's happening, and the larger part of you exists in this realm. Right? It's not this physical body; it's this emotional realm, and we can see that pretty clearly when we know that if we don't feel good, then nothing's good. Nothing's good in our life if you don't feel good, right? You're depressed, you're sad, you're angry, whatever. You're nothing. You don't want to do anything when you're in those zones, and all that's going on is you just don't feel good. So that's where all
Okay,
the
then.
influence is happening, right?
Well, let me
So
ask this, if I can just interject something.
Mhm.
So it seems what you're saying is that it seems that you can suggest from that that which you've said so far, that rather than we having this GHK thing where the psyche interprets it literally, right? And we just create this psyche that interprets things and then controls your body, right? It seems as though the body is just a 3D physical representation of the emotional and thought realm.
That's
And
right.
so if you think that person's a pain in my neck, then you have a pain in your neck. Like physically, you have pain in your neck. That's how it is. You're saying I have a pain in my neck, so you have a pain in your neck. Full stop.
That's one way to look at it. Yeah. Keep in mind, right? The psyche is always running your body. It's not doesn't take over here or there. It's what a materialist would call the autonomic nervous system. Right? You can't put your finger on what the autonomic nervous system is, but that's their explanation for what pumps your blood and breathes your lungs and moves the oxygen around and digests your food and all the rest, right? That's the psyche doing all that work. You with me on that?
Yeah, I'm away. Well, not exactly. I mean, people say that there's a thing called a psyche. I'm like, okay, can you point to it for me? You know,
Well, sure. You can't point to any of these things, right? They're not physical. That's why you can't
I
point to it,
suppose
right?
these are just metaphors or something along the lines of a metaphor, right? Just a way of pointing at a phenomenon.
Well, psyche is the same as subconscious mind. Same thing.
All right.
Right? That's a real thing. Even psychologists will acknowledge that that's something, right? You want to quit smoking and go to the hypnosis, and they move your conscious ego mind aside, and they just give one command: you're not a smoker. And if they could get past the ego mind and tell that to the subconscious mind, then the person comes out of hypnosis and boom, they don't want to smoke anymore. So that's just an
Mhm.
example of the existence of this thing, right? Called, and psyche is just the word that Dr. Harmer chose. That's what the Greeks said. The seat of the soul is the psyche.
So when Dr. Harmer says psyche, a more spiritual person might just listen to that and hear God.
You could do that. Yeah. There's this
Okay.
notion of the superconscious, that's also in psychology, which is kind of beyond the subconscious. Right. So there's this, if you look at it like egoic consciousness is just totally about me, taking care of me, survival and getting ahead and everything else. And then there's the subconscious, which widens your perspective a little bit. You care about other people and aren't always out there trying to do everything for me. And then there's the superconscious, which implies that you're never trying to do anything for me. Those are the implications of the three levels.
Okay.
There's zero interest in what me gets or does or achieves at that level. So you might call that the God level, more accurately.
All right then. Okay. Well, probably one more question here. Um, so okay, let's say we're doing this judging thing. We're doing it to this. We're doing it to that. Everything we can put our judgment on, we're like, I'll put it there. I'll put it here. I'll put it everywhere. And apparently, it's bad for you. And we shouldn't be doing it, but we're doing it so much. So that's quite interesting. So we must have gotten started doing it for some reason. And also, it seems like the media seems to try to make us judge. So,
Everything. Yeah. Everything. Yeah.
so
It's coming from
what do you
everywhere.
think's going on there? Why, why are we doing all this judging? How did we get started doing this? Why do the cabal want us to judge? What's that all that about?
Well, it's interesting that there's a lot of, a lot of talk about how kids are sicker than ever today, and the healthcare is up 50% over the last decade, and there's more and more every year. There's a new sickness, and every year there's more and more of this going on, right? And everybody wants to point to some material explanation for all of those things, right? The vaccine schedule, the pollutants in the water, the Roundup in the wheat, and it's an endless list of toxins are the cause of this rise in disease, as we like to say. And I'm putting forth that it's the conformity to the world and all the madness that's going on right now, peak madness, fear, and judgment being spewed upon us from every potential angle you can imagine. That is the cause of all this extra disease in the world today. And there's a line in the Bible. I don't know the exact scripture, but it is, do not conform yourself to the world. And that's effectively what you're going to have to. Anybody who takes this to heart is going to have to recognize that it is your conformity to the world that is the fundamental cause of the problems, pain, suffering, negative situations, and issues that are coming into your life. So being a part of the tribe means a lot of pain and suffering. That's the simple way to say it.
Oh, well, then I got just one final question to just touch on the final part of that. So, that obviously that you've mentioned this to me before, like the Adam and Eve story, the knowledge of good and evil, right?
Right. The tree
Fruit
of
gives you the
knowledge.
power to differentiate between good and evil. So the power to judge or something like that
That's
is
what knowledge of good and evil
what's
is
all that
judgment.
about?
That's judgment.
Right.
Knowledge of good and evil means I know what's good and what's evil. I'm the judge. Right.
Right. So when you judge, it seems like that's the sin, the original sin. Like when you call on your marvelous egoic ability to determine what's good and what's bad and judge, that then you begin the story of the Bible.
Well, it's not the original sin, but yeah, that's it. And so it's not so the story of Adam and Eve isn't a story about who the first parents were and everybody, we're all descendants of Adam and Eve, right? That's the common story, right? But the reality of it is that we're doing that moment to moment when we choose to go into our thought stream and make a judgment on things and validate somebody else's perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the story in the Bible laid out. It's who's ever seen a tree of knowledge of good and evil? Is that a real thing, Matt? Like an apple tree or an oak tree, right?
I couldn't
It's
comment on that.
it's obviously a metaphor, and
Right.
that is the serpent, right? And here's another thought I had. I mentioned this to Matt the other day. I thought it was just interesting. It just popped into my head one day, as things do. But where there's knowledge, there's ignorance. It has to be, right? It's the opposing pole of the duality. So I think about professors I've met over the year. They're kind of weird guys. Most of them that I met, right? That the guy who's just like triple PhD in astrophysics or whatever. Right? They're strange people a lot of times, and they've
I hope you're not
garnered
judging them.
so much knowledge about a particular topic that it's like now they're in ignorance of just whatever basic social norms or something like that, right? Yeah, it's just an observation, right? That's not a judgment, but there seems to be, the more and more knowledge you accumulate on a topic, it's like there's a deficit somewhere else,
Mhm.
right? There's ignorance about something else. You have to balance out that extensive knowledge with extensive ignorance in some other capacity. I don't know. It's just an observation. I don't know if it's true or not.
Okay, then. Well, that concludes my questions. Uh, would you like to mention anything in closing?
Yeah, well, so yeah, so this idea of do not conform oneself to the world. There's another quote by Jiddu Krishnamurti. He didn't, I guess he didn't really say it. It's kind of like the Mark Twain thing, but he said, it's no sign. He's credited with saying it's no sign of good health to be well adapted to an insane society. And I think, if he didn't say those exact words, he certainly probably said things that pointed in that direction. And this goes straight to the heart of our desire to fit in and go along, to get along and be part of the tribe. And that's this pushing against that a little bit is the hardest part of this. I'm going to pull my judgment back from the world and make a real effort to stop doing this. So that has to be dealt with, right? So if you've got some friends or people you hang out with that you recognize are really into judgment, and a lot of groups of friends are, um, that may impinge upon your ability to be comfortable around them going forward. So that's a lot of pressure. Understood. So there needs to be this balancing point, right? You don't need to tell all your friends that they're judging and criticizing and complaining all the time. But the question is, do you want to sit and listen to that, participate in that? So it's a difficult choice to make for people. But as you start to consider the possibility that judgment is wreaking havoc in your life in ways unseen, and choose to pull back and analyze and contemplate, perhaps not do as much as you used to, or make an effort not to, you might find yourself feeling uncomfortable around people that you used to feel comfortable around. I can see this like in movies or comedians or people I used to enjoy listening to. When I can see and feel it coming from them now, I can't listen to them anymore, can't watch the movie anymore. But I could when I was well conformed to the ways of the world in the past, when I did enjoy that movie or comedian. Make sense?
Yeah.
I'll just make one last point. Wanted to slip this in there. The esoterics and the metaphysics positions suggest that the outer world is a reflection of the inner world. So it's in a way, it's dead. It's like after the fact. It's a imaging of what's coming from inside of us. So the suggestion is that all we got to do is get rid of the bad guys. And I think I've said this in a podcast before. Like if we somehow figured out every single bad guy in the world and rounded them all up and threw them in prison or whatever, sunk them in the middle of the ocean, the world would fill up with the same amount of bad guys a moment later, because it would have to if we all believed that there's bad guys. So the real fix in the world, right, is if you want to be a net positive to the collective, I mean, obviously to yourself, but even to the collective, is to begin withdrawing this incessant judgment of the world and the leaders and all the rest. And by doing so, you're going to not be contributing to what the outer reality shows us is there's a bunch of bad, evil guys running the world trying to destroy us. It's not going to be rounding them all up and throwing them in prison. That's what the esoterics suggest. Any comment?
I would only mention take your power back at this point. I got something to say there.
Perfect. Good timing.
Okay.
Please
Well,
do.
thanks for that, Brad. That was so awesome. Just great content. Just amazing information. Bet everyone enjoyed that. Thanks for accumulating that through experience and reading over the years.
Could be quite
So
overwhelming,
just
but yep.
sure, just on the back of that, like Brad and I scripted out over probably took us 6 months to write this video that's plastered all over our website. It's like if you're watching this on our website, the video is probably directly below. And it's just takes you through how starting by the position of like judging the bad people, the politicians, etc., and just like sitting there shaking your fist at the TV, and it's like this it helps you see how that disempowers you. And it helps you see how we all created this world where we've got people ruling over us and abusing us, let's say. How we all created that, and how the real solution isn't to just go in and like pick them up by the shoulders of their coat jacket and remove them and drop them somewhere else, but to fix ourselves instead. And it's just scripted out so nicely. So if you got 30 minutes, just listen to that thing. Even if you don't want to watch the video, just listen to that in the background. It just really lays it out so tight. I think you'll love it, and introduces Take Your Power Back at the end. It's really cool. Enjoy it.
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Matt. And yeah, this is, this is taking this step towards thinking about what judgment does to you is an empowering step, because you begin to see, you'll see results pretty quickly. And you'll see that where that power has been mislaid and how you can take it back instead of giving it away. And it's just one more notch of the rung, not one more rung of the ladder that you're now scaled past, and you're that much further ahead than the average person out there. And you'll find, I found, that life has immensely improved by withdrawing judgment. And that's a huge part of taking your power back. Huge part. So there you have it.
Right on. Beautiful. Thanks, Brad.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks everybody for listening. Again, it's a deep subject, and it's if you're hearing this for the first time, we understand that it's a little bit overwhelming, but this is a worthwhile thing to contemplate, consider, and we look forward to a lot more podcasts and questions, comments, clarifications in the future, so that we can get to the core of it all, and hopefully eradicate this as a normal way of life for most of us. That's the goal at the end of the day.
Right on.
All right. Thanks for
Okay.
all your
Thanks, everyone.
insightful questions, Matt. Thanks everyone for listening. And we'll see you on the next one. Matt?
Okay. See you later. See you next time.
Thanks, everybody. Bye bye.